All right, let's talk a little bit about Enrique Delgado-Garcia. There's been
Yeah.
some update in his case. Tomorrow will be a year. I
Oh,
am frustrated. Many are frustrated. And it looks like Ted Daniel did some investigating. So state paid over $500,000 to investigate into police academy death. So my thought on this is, okay, and from what I know, you have to think that there are lawyers, there are union reps that step in, and tend to throw these walls up in times like this, and I'm not making any excuse at all. I'm just telling you what I know. Also, you gotta think, they went through probably investigated every single person in that academy, all of the recruits that were there, probably talked to previous classes as well. $500,000 is an insane price tag where we're sitting a year out, and I've emailed David Meyer and said, "Where is this update?" I've put, of course,
yeah.
he ain't gonna say anything to me. I got uh a very standard typical email a few months ago as of, "Oh, David has gotten your inquiry and there's no comment at this time." You know,
Yeah.
um it's getting crazy. This needs to have some type of conclusion. We had some previous updates to this as well, but
That's an
give peace to
exorbitant.
this family.
I'm so sorry, Brian, for interrupting you.
No, it's
That's
okay.
an exorbitant amount of money to spend on an investigation where there's really no sound answers and resolution coming out at this point. As was, for example, in Karen Reed's case, that was an
Yeah,
exorbitant amount of money to be paid over the course of two trials. But $500,000 in 1 year's time, this family needs peace. They
yeah,
need full resolution. Um, and honestly, as a litigator of 25 years, I can say this: that money, criminal culpability aside, that money, which is paid, I presume, out of the Commonwealth's pocket because it's a state police matter, that money is better saved for budgetary purposes to be paid out of, like, what they call it, a captive policy that
yeah.
would pay out in a civil litigation filed by his family, right? So they filed their lawsuit, I believe, right? I know they have a lawyer. Did they actually file a lawsuit yet? Do we know that?
Yeah, there was an article. Hang on, let me see if I can find the
Um,
article because the lawyer just spoke out
Sorry to
a
make you dig
couple.
for it.
No, it's okay. I know there was an update. Let's see. Yeah, so the most, and I don't mind going over this again, but real quick, Mass Lady 1234 says, "Brian, have you spoke to the family recently? Have you gotten anything from the attorneys, even if it can't be released to the public yet?" I mean, this has been pretty cut and, like, what I've talked about and what's been reported in the mainstream media. It's been pretty cut and dry. I mean, we know what happened in this situation. To me, what I think is, where was the absolute breakdown in this? Who was monitoring these boxing matches? What was the overall protocol? Um, um, you know, uh, that's the things that, from what I'm understanding, are getting looked into. Who is responsible? Who is responsible for overseeing this? And that's why, obviously, the boxing program got shut down. Who was doing medical evaluations at the time of this? So you're going to get into those type of things as well too. As far as communication, I tend not to bother the family unless they kind of reach out to me. And I had some communication with Enrique's uncle back in August, and basically just said, the work that you've been developing in favor of justice for our dear Enrique has been very important. And we've had some conversations outside of that, shorter conversation. And it's just really keeping the story alive and keeping the pressure out there. And I'm glad that Ted has jumped on this as well too. And he's been
Right.
pretty prominent in reporting about this as well too. He's done a great job. Yeah. So the one that I was talking about last week, they did reveal the cause of death, and it was not an aneurysm. And I know that's been put out there. So Enrique Delgado-Garcia, cause of death revealed as blunt force trauma.
Right.
And of course, all these ads have to pop up. So as Enrique Delgado-Garcia died accidentally of blunt force trauma injury to his head, according to the autopsy shared with his family. Let's see. I'm going to read this. It says the results of the autopsy were shared with Delgado Garcia's family, and their lawyer Mike Wilcox relayed the finding to the Globe. He declined to share the copy of the report with the newspaper, and did not return any request of comment to Boston.com. Goes on to say Delgado Garcia died of complications from intracranial hemorrhage due to blunt impact injuries of the head and in the setting of a physical training exercise. The medical examiner's office deemed the death an accident. He said that it was note that Delgado Garcia was injured during physical training exercises. The autopsy found that Delgado Garcia had a heart issue. This is really strange. A pre-myocarditis, I think I said that right, with progression of inflammatory cardiomyopathy.
Perimyocarditis.
You might know what this is. Of an
I
unknown
do.
cause, according to the Globe, and then perimyocarditis, I think I said that right, refers to an inflammation of the heart and the sac around it, which can weaken the heart muscle. There's no way that they can spin, and I like that Wilcox is saying this, there's no way that they can spin this excuse on their conduct of failure to monitor this properly. Wilcox told the Globe, referring to safety concerns at the training academy. The incident surrounding Delgado Garcia's death has far been unclear. Previous, the family had that he said he had missing teeth and suffered a broken neck and brain injury. A friend from Worcester previously said that Delgado called the training conditions torture, citing hazing conditions. A former police trainee who was at the same class as Delgado Garcia said he endured alleged bullying and racist remarks. In a statement, the police spoke and said fully cooperated with the investigation and waits for the finding from Maya's independent investigation. And then let's see. Maya didn't return a request for comment on Wednesday, but Wilcox told the Globe he's satisfied with the ongoing investigation, adding that, quote, it appears to have not neglected to look at any aspect of this. Let's see. And then it's just going to talk about some of the events that have gone on in the last couple of years with the.
I'd be interested to know, and maybe Todd McGee knows this, do the trainees or cadets, whatever they're referred to, do they undergo a physical before they?
Of course, 100%, because I remember talking to the family about it, and they said that he had no issues going into the academy. He was cleared to attend the academy. They said, I remember talking to his sister, and his sister said she couldn't even remember the last time that he reported that he had a headache. That's how clear he was.
That tracks for me, but what doesn't track is the fact that he had perimyocarditis tied with what's called cardiomyopathy. Now, I am not an expert, but I've handled a lot of cases involving those conditions. That's a persistent cardiac related condition. It's actually two conditions, which you often see tied hand in hand. If he had a full-throated physical examination, and sometimes, you go for a physical and, they're very superficial. You're not actually getting a cardiac workup or an EKG or anything like that. So it is very possible a pro forma physical did not pick up on an underlying cardiac condition. But it's weird as I listen to this, that doesn't it kind of remind you of A Few Good Men with the hazing incident, the code red involving Private Santiago? He too had an underlying cardiac condition, and he was hazed, not in a boxing ring, which the hazing act itself ended up precipitating his death. But with all of that said, his family, I know they have a lawyer. I don't know that they've sued yet. They've put the state on notice that they are going to sue if they haven't sued yet. But as a taxpayer of the Commonwealth, which I am not, I would be interested in and really rooting for the Commonwealth to be spending its resources not to a tune of $500,000 to advance this investigation, but to keep that money, do a swift, thorough investigation, and then use that money to help compensate the family somewhat out of a captive policy. To, nothing will ever bring Enrique back, but there's some things that can be done to help make them whole again from a financial standpoint, because in the eyes of the law, the family will be deprived of his, they call it loss of consortium, his future services that he could provide to his parents in the future, all of those things. So
Yeah.
that's a ridiculous amount of
The
money to be spent.
boxing match did happen. Like, it did happen. So I want to make that very clear. It was during that boxing match, and that's where the blunt force injuries came from. So I want to make it very clear, because you got to think, these are not professionally trained athletes. They're just going in there and winging it at each other.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you can go and watch. There's videos of these training exercises that are done properly, and I want to put that in there, properly online. And we've gone over those videos with I remember we did a stream with Mazza. Todd has been on here, and we went over the proper procedure, how to do these. So I want people to understand this. The match did happen, and it just was in an improper way. So you have to look at who is responsible, who is letting this happen, and that was the digging in the investigation. Why it's taking tomorrow will be a year.
Wow.
Is insane. Just Joe is talking about the heart condition, and they're saying it's a red herring. I'm telling you, the state is gonna, I'm gonna speculate here, but the state's gonna come back with their argument and say, oh no, it was because of the heart condition.
Oh yeah.
I guarantee you.
Yes, and I agree with Just Joe as well that it's a red herring. But the state will need a medical expert to approximately cause
Here we go.
the death to the heart injury. Like the heart injury had to help precipitate.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. They're gonna go, oh well, the heart injury sped up the head injury.
We actually have something in law called the eggshell skull doctrine. And if that doesn't bore you guys enough on a Friday night, but what the eggshell skull doctrine means is you take your plaintiff as you find them. So if you end up, Brian, let's say you get in a bar fight and you punch someone in the face, and that person has an underlying bone condition where their bones are frail and they have calcium deficiencies, and if they get any hits, everything crumbles from a structural standpoint. That person sues you and says, look, you've destroyed my face with your fists, and I'm now crumbling, and I'm very injured. In the eyes of the law, you can't just say, well, that's not my fault. You have this crumbling bone deficiency. That's not my fault. I just gave you a good right hook. You take your plaintiff as you find them. So in this case, which is not a civil case yet, I don't believe, there's going to be allegations against the Massachusetts State Police. Whether or not this was some type of murder, manslaughter, or any of that, at a minimum, what I'm seeing is negligence and failure to supervise, criminal negligence, in my opinion. But with that said, when that civil lawsuit comes, if not criminal ramifications and charges in the future, the Commonwealth is going to argue it was a heart condition that sped all of this up, and the attorneys for whomever, whether it's in the civil litigation, if it's the family's attorney advancing the claim, or if it's in any other related co-defendants attorneys, they're going to have to argue that this is a red herring, as Just Joe called it. And that it really was blunt force.
And I want to keep everybody in mind, back in June, it was reported that the grand jury testimony, this was being heard in front of a grand jury. And I reported after as well too, because I had a source that tipped me off. People were pissed. They're like, why are you talking about that? This is at the fucking grand jury. I'm like, the mainstream media talked about this was at the grand jury. If I have a source that tips me, I mean, it's the same thing that they get. They get sources, and people were pissed that I said that. And I'm like, I want everybody to know that not only in June, this was also at another session that this was heard during the grand jury. So they're going over this information. I just listen. They come on, man. 1 year.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
too long. Not for this type of claim. No
yeah,
way. In a year, this could have been figured out in maybe a week's time, maybe a little longer because of lab work and other related medical testing, whether
yeah,
it's toxicology reports, and maybe there's a lot of people who had to be interviewed, but a year's time, this is telling me there is a cover up in the works.
yeah. And again, I'm not making an excuse. You got to think. You have to go through that whole academy. What did people know? What did people see? Who was in charge? You know what I mean? This is what I
Yeah.
want people to get. And then what happens is when all those fucking questions come in from lawyers and investigators, guess what happens? And you know this, everybody lawyers up. And
Yeah.
because they're a union, they get their union rep involved. So
Yeah.
everybody just shuts down and it slows the entire process down. I want my lawyer and I want my union rep here.
I
So
kind of I have to say this is the kind of thing that makes lawyers have a bad name, because
yeah,
I'm sure people have lawyered up. I'm sure there's also probably a little bit of Karen Reed type of collaboration of stories like the McAlberts.
yeah,
There's a lining of stories, but also whomever is doing the investigating, they're probably also looking into the entire boxing program
oh yeah,
historically. Were there prior incidents? Should they have known? Because that ties
right,
in with that cardiac issue.
yeah,
Should the Massachusetts State Police, through its supervisors on site, should they have known previously that this program was not properly being managed? Were there reasons why it was not done safely? And those are things that I'd love to hear Todd McGee's
yeah.
thoughts on too.
Um, hang on 1 second. But
Yeah.
if I want to read this really quick. Let's see. There was a list. We had a list before of the team of all the people that were involved in the investigation. It was like 8 or 10 of them at the time. Um, I don't have the article here, but why? Yeah, and this is the question: why does it cost 500,000? The union can't stop a criminal investigation.
They can
Yeah,
sure
but
stall it, but you're right, just
you'd
Joe.
think they can't, but they can sure fucking stall it. Believe me,
Yeah.
because listen, this is a big. I don't want to say like scandal, but this is a big happening at the academy. And what is and this is how lawyers and unions work. If something happens at their facility, like you're all right. I'm trying to word this correctly. What does the state police commonly do every couple of months? They try to recruit new cadets to come into
Hmm.
the academy. If you have someone that dies at the academy, how good does that make your academy look? So what
Right.
they're doing is that in my opinion here, I think they're going to try to fucking just erase this and make it go away. But we've had great people and had these conversations and keep this public and opening this up so it doesn't get forgotten about. I don't want the state police to forget about this. I don't want new recruits or cadets that are going to go into the academy to ever forget about this.
Right.
Like they should know what they're getting into. And given the track record of the state police over the fucking last 20 years, I'm sorry, Nan, I'm
Hmm.
not walking in there and going, I'd love to join your organization.
I'd pay money to
Like,
see that.
you
But
know,
it's true, and they don't have the leverage to like speak up because you want to be an officer, so you're getting hazed. It's like joining a fraternity. You don't want to say, "Hey, this is unacceptable." So everyone needs to go into that endeavor with eyes wide open. There is a huge amount to lose on
yeah, of
behalf of the state police with this very issue.
course.
And the
It's
timing of
trust.
it, that the contemporaneous nature of it as it aligns with the Karen Reed case and others is very notable. They need a win. They don't. I'm sure when Enrique, and I mean this with all due respect to him, his loss, his family's loss, when he passed away during this boxing exercise, it
Hmm.
was like the worst thing that could have
Hmm.
possibly happened to the MSP. I'm
Hmm.
sure
But
Everybody
it's under
panicked.
their negligence, Nan, that they're not, and I'm
Mhm.
sorry to cut you off, that
No,
they're not monitoring this program correctly. And when
right.
you're not doing it correctly, and I don't want to say accidents, things like this fucking happen. And I don't want to see another recruit go into a facility that possibly, and from all the reports that I've talked to, friends and family, Enrique was a really great guy and wanted to come in and change hearts and minds and do his job. That's what I learned about him. And I don't want someone like this to be put into a situation like this again and this to happen to them,
I
because from what
agree.
I understand, he was going to be one of the good people that got into this profession.
I agree, and I really admire that you care so much about future applicants. And we all can agree, at least many of us can agree, that they need an overhaul of many, not
Yeah.
all, but many officers, Massachusetts State Police troopers, because there's been some morally questionable officers that I've learned of in the recent years. But in civil litigation, by the way, we have a measure that's called punitive or treble damages. It's like the
Mhm.
same thing. Those can be added to a complaint, which is above like a verdict. If you, as a jury, want to send a message to the defense, like to the defendant, if they're found liable, you then, if you get a jury to agree, can assess punitive damages against them to teach them a lesson. And sometimes it's a good idea to plead for punitive damages because those are A, not covered by insurance. It has to come right out of the defense pocket. And B, it's designed to get the behavior that
Mm.
caused the problem to stop. I look at this matter as one grounded at a minimum in civil negligence because there was a failure to properly oversee and monitor this program and the safety of the cadets. With that said, if I were suing the Massachusetts State Police, I would throw in what we call a prayer for
Mhm.
punitive damages to send that message to the Massachusetts State Police that this has to stop. And
Yeah.
that is why spending $500,000 on an investigation that's gone on for 1 year tomorrow, which is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's money that could have better been spent putting punitive damages in the pockets of the Garcia family.
Yeah, or bettering the program, cleaning things
Yeah.
up in that academy, just anything, anything at that
Yes.
point. Uh